Well, hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha TV. You're watching Question Hour. This is the latest episode of the show, and I'm your host Rajat Kain, joined by my colleague Kriti Mishra.
Thank you so much, Rajat. And as you know, our show focuses on the important unstarred questions asked by the members of the upper house in the last session of Parliament.
Well, this show focuses on the parliamentary proceedings of the upper house, where questions are asked by the members and replies are given by the ministries and departments. Broadly speaking, there are three categories of questions. One is the starred, unstarred and short notice questions. The starred questions are the ones where answers are already given by the minister on the floor of the house.
And unstarred questions are those questions asked by the members of the upper house and also lower house, of which answers are given in the written format by the government. And this show of ours will focus on all the important questions asked by the members of the Rajya Sabha, asked in the last session of the upper house.
Well, that's it. So let's begin the show. Well, starting with the first question of the show that was asked by member Vinay Sahasrabudhe from Ministry of Home Affairs. The member asked whether there are any new schemes or programs introduced by the government to combat the threat of terrorism during the last 5 years, and whether India has collaborated with other countries to combat terrorism, and also, and most importantly I would say, is the progress asked by the member of the National Intelligence Grid, or the NAT Grid.
Well, the government has given a detailed reply to this question asked by member Dr. Sahasrabudhe, and the government says that it has adopted zero tolerance policy to tackle terrorism. Close and effective mechanism exists between intelligence and security agencies at the centre as well as the state level. The multi-agency centre has also been strengthened and reorganised to enable it to function on 24/7 basis for real-time collation of data and also sharing of intelligence with the central and state agencies which are concerned with this. States have also raised special forces to deal with terror incidents, and Central Armed Police Forces and National Security Guards have also been stationed at different locations. The central agencies have been organising capacity building programs for the state forces as well as intelligence sharing and investigation of terror cases. The government engages with other countries as well on ongoing basis on the issue of terrorism during various high-level and other official visits. The government has also set up joint working groups, also known as JWGs, on counter-terrorism with 25 countries and 3 groupings, that is BIMSTEC, BRICS and the EU. And the meetings of these groups are held on regular basis, which have been found useful for exchange of views on threat perceptions, sharing of experiences and also the best practices as well as capacity building. And also replying to a supplementary question asked by the member on the NAT Grid, the government says that NAT Grid has been created as an IT platform to assist security and law enforcement agencies to counter terror for national security. In fact, member Dr. Sahasrabudhe joined us through virtual platform, and this is what he had to say on government's response to his question. And also, there are suggestions made by the member to the government. Take a look. And joining us on the Question Hour show is Rajya Sabha MP Dr. Vinay Sahasrabudhe. Dr. Sahasrabudhe, welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, and thank you so much for joining us through virtual platform. Sir, I remember interviewing you in the corridors of Parliament, but we are living in a different arena now. So the first, of course, question that we picked up is that you've asked from Ministry of Home Affairs, which is about combating terrorism. So the government has given a detailed reply, and the government also says that it has adopted a zero tolerance policy towards terrorism. Your take, sir?
Well, as you rightly pointed out, that the objective behind this entire question, as is very clear, is to get to understand as to what kind of efforts that have gone behind in reducing the number of incidences of terrorism. Because as what we see, since 2014 till this date, the strikes of the terrorists at various places in different forms, whether it's a bomb attack or whether any kind of other skirmishes with the law enforcement agencies. I mean, there is a significant reduction because there is an element of deterrence which we see all around. And therefore, I was curious to know about as to what kind of efforts that have gone behind in ensuring that the terrorist tendencies are in a way nipped in the bud or arrested or not allowed to strike and create any trouble for our law and order mechanism as such. And with that particular idea in my mind, I had raised this question in the Rajya Sabha, to which the Honorable Home Minister has very elaborately responded. And I believe this policy of zero tolerance towards terrorism is for all of us not only to see, but I would say to experience. And that is one of the remarkable successes of the Modi government.
So the answer also talks about government engaging with other countries on ongoing basis and other high-level official visits.
Yeah, because as it happens, terrorism is not confined only to the borders of our country. As we know that India has been one of the most victimized country in that sense, because there are neighboring countries and they are troubling us. They are exporting terror, in fact, to India. And this cross-border terrorism is, in fact, one of the big headaches, has been one of the big headaches. But as what we see, I mean, a couple of attacks from the terrorists who are hidden and supported also by the neighboring countries, and how India has responded to them. I mean, it is for all of us to understand, to know. It's a matter of common knowledge. I need not even elaborate on that. But then this has to be an ongoing process, and therefore it is very important. And the government has mentioned that we are consistently dealing with the neighboring countries. We are talking to them, for example, BIMSTEC, BRICS, and also the European Union, because again, there are terrorists who are coming from far off places also, because they are having that kind of a design in their mind, and they might have taken temporary shelter in a European country, or maybe in any far off country. And therefore, as wide a network that we establish to arrest these terrorist tendencies, to ensure that they are not capable of striking as per their whims and fancies. It is better for the entire humanity, not just for India. And therefore, I am happy to understand through this response coming from the government, that the government has also set up joint working groups on counter-terrorism with as many as 25 countries in 3 groups. This is very, very significant, and I would definitely say that it underscores the steely resolve of this government to do away with the threat of terrorism in every possible way.
So after 26/11 attacks, we saw that NAT grid was also established. How do you look at its efficacy?
Well, the NAT grid was a necessity, and perhaps it could have been in place much earlier, I would say, because these days the law and order mechanism is now kind of more IT centric than any time before. We are using information technology, we are using new softwares, we are using new apps, and therefore, national grid definitely, in a way, ensures that all our informations, our intelligences are properly shared in a with due secrecy. At the same time, people get to kind of gather some insight through the information which is coming to them and which is passing on through them. So for that, NAT grid was a necessity. I'm happy that now it is in place, and the government is working more vigorously to ensure, and as the response had said, that the physical infrastructure for this NAT grid is to be completed by 31st of March. So I'm sure it is completed now, and the IT solution will go live by 31st of December this year. So it's just about a matter of few months that we will have the IT solution practically being utilized by all our law and order mechanism. I mean, people who are manning this mechanism, so to say.
So the answer also talks about real-time information sharing and also collation of data. Certainly, coordination between center and states, that is of paramount importance.
Yeah, of course, because as it happens, there are multiple groups that are operating in multiple states. For example, take the question of the left-wing extremism, the Naxalites for that matter. Now, of course, the incidents of Naxalite or Naxal-inspired violence are relatively less. But we cannot sit pretty and believe that perhaps now we have completely stopped this kind of a menace. It is not like that. Whether it is Telangana, whether it is Chhattisgarh, whether it is Andhra, or even parts of Maharashtra or Madhya Pradesh for that matter, this is a very real threat. And therefore, we will have to be very alert and keep all our antennas very sharp to get to know what kind of movements are happening in this particular sector. And therefore, this information exchange and greater coordination between the states was also very, very essential. Unfortunately, in the past, let me add over here that certain state governments had a kind of, I'm very sorry to say so, a kind of vested interest in keeping this terrorism or the Naxalite threat alive. Because when this threat is alive, chances are that they may get more resources. But then the cost that you and me, all of us have to pay is extremely heavy. And therefore, we cannot allow any kind of a threat to continue to be live. And therefore, we will have to ensure that all these threats are dealt with an iron hand. And that is what the government under Prime Minister Modi is ensuring.
And sir, before we end this conversation, your suggestions to the government.
No, I'm happy that the government has put all the required infrastructure and mechanisms, including the NAT grade and things like that, in place. At the same time, what is also required is that the citizens need to be made more conscious than what they are about the terrorist threat. Because terrorism is not something which is just a law and order issue. It is a law and order issue, but then there are several forces that are very active in our country or have been very active in our country. There is a history to that, who spread secessionism. I mean, we know how people who were otherwise known as academics, people who were otherwise known as men of letters for that matter, or even poets, were supporting these Naxalite activities, this left-wing extremism. And therefore, some of them are behind the bars now. What they wanted, because it was their theory. They have written books saying that India is not one country. They believe that Chhattisgarh is a different country and Jharkhand is a different country. That is their ideology. And we just cannot allow these kinds of ideologies to be spread and some kind of vivisection of our great motherland or any attempt towards that is allowed. And therefore, we will have to also undertake a huge amount of effort, a chain of efforts rather, for making people more conscious and aware of the designs of these people who do not appear like a terrorist, but in fact, very unfortunately, are terrorists.
Right, so that's a very legit point that you're making. But Dr. Sahasrabudhe, you joined us on the Question Now show through virtual platform and shared those details with us. Thank you so much for speaking to Rajya Sabha television, sir. And now let's move on to the next question that was asked by member Rajkumar Dhoot, and this question pertains to the Ministry of Finance. And the member has asked the government about the measures taken to substantially increase the GST collections in the country.
Well, responding to query, the ministry said that administrative steps has been taken by the government to achieve the targets set up for financial year as GST rate rationalization to improve tax compliance, mandatory e-filing and e-payment of taxes, penalty for delayed payment, extensive use of third-party sources like state VAT department, income tax for compliance verification, regular enforcement and compliance verification tax returns, taxpayer education and media campaigns. Now, following steps has been taken to improve compliance mechanism under GST, thereby increasing revenue collections in the country. Now, these steps include that by notification number 75/2019, Central Tax dated 26 December 2019, Rule 86A has been inserted in CGST Rules 2017 to empower tax officer not below the rank of Assistant Commissioner to block input tax credit or the ITC available in the electronic credit ledger of taxpayer if he has reason to believe that such ITC is ineligible or has been fraudulently availed. Well, next question was asked by member Shanta Chetri from Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. The member asked whether government has approved sale of green bonds for supporting renewable energy. how much capital has been raised via green bonds so far?
Responding to this query asked by the member, the government says that Securities and Exchange Board of India, or SEBI, is the market regulator for listed securities including bonds. Via its circular dated May 30th, 2017 has specified that a debt security shall be considered as green or green debt security if the funds raised through issuance of debt securities are to be utilized for projects or assets falling under the following broad categories. Now, these categories include renewable and sustainable energy, including wind, solar, bioenergy and other sources of energy which use clean technology. Second, clean transportation, including mass or public transportation. Thirdly, sustainable water management, including clean or drinking water, water recycling. Fourth, climate change adaptation. Fifth, energy efficiency, including efficient and green buildings. Sixth, sustainable waste management, including recycling, waste to energy, efficient disposal of wastage, and also sustainable land use, including sustainable forestry or agriculture and biodiversity conservation. And now let's move on to the next question of this edition of the Question Now show that has been asked by member KJN Fons, and this question pertains to the Ministry of Power. And the member has inquired about the transmission losses suffered in the country.
Replying to query, the ministry said the transmission losses in country in interstate transmission system are in the range of 2.5% to 3%, which are technical in nature. Now, the details of state-wise aggregate technical and commercial, that's AT and C losses, which are inter alia, include the losses in intra-state transmission and sub-transmission distribution system during last 3 years are furnished in the annexures in the reply by the ministry. Also, the details of loss suffered by the State Electricity Board during past 3 years has been furnished in the annexures as replied by the ministry. Now, on the query regarding the steps taken by the government has launched Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana for the financial and operational turnaround of utilities in the year 2015. Further, the government has recently advised the states and with high losses to take measures to improve the operational financial performance, which includes instituting a system of energy accounting and releasing subsidies based on the actual energies accounting for subsidized categories. Well, next question was asked by member Harshvardhan Singh Dungarpur from Ministry of Tourism. The member asked about the amount of central financial assistance released to each state and union territory administration for development of ecotourism during last 3 years.
Well, giving an elaborate response to this question, the government says that ecotourism has been identified as one of the 15 thematic circuits for development under the Swadesh Darshan scheme. Now, in addition to these, the ministry has also taken several steps to boost ecotourism in the country. These include evolved and adapted comprehensive sustainable tourism criteria for India for 3 or more segments of the tourism industry, namely accommodation, tour operators, beaches, backwaters, lakes, rivers, applicable for the entire country. Guidelines for approval of hotel projects at the implementation stage and also for classification or reclassification of operational hotels under various categories mandate incorporation of various friendly measures like installation of sewage treatment plant, rainwater harvesting, waste management system, and also pollution control and introduction of non-chlorofluorocarbon equipment for refrigeration, air conditioning, and also energy and water conservation measures. And also promoting ecotourism through domestic and international campaigns and supporting seminars, conferences and events focusing on development of ecotourism in the country from time to time. And moving on to the last question of this edition of the Question Now show, which has been asked by member Majid Memon, and this question pertains to the Ministry of Science and Technology. And Mr. Memon has asked the government whether Indian Space Research Organisation or ISRO is sharing information with fishermen about prospective fishing zones through their satellites.
Well, it's an important question indeed, and in the response given by the ministry, it replied in affirmative, saying yes, the Indian Space Research Organisation has designed and developed methodology for forecasting potential fishing zones using satellite data. The methodology was transferred to Indian National Centre for Ocean Information Services, that is an autonomous body under the aegis of Ministry of Earth Sciences, for providing operational service on potential fishing zones and advisories to the fishermen. Now, in the year 2010, ISRO has established a satellite data reception station at the International Center for Ocean Information Services, or the INCOIS, for direct reception of ocean color monitoring, or the OCM, data from OceanSat. Now, the INCOIS, as mandated agency, is providing operational services on PFZ advisory to fishermen in the country, and the INCOIS is providing the advisory on PFZ, that is the fishing zone, for 14 sectors covering all states and islands region of India. The INCOIS uses real-time data from ISRO and National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration in United States of America satellite passing over the east coast and west coast of India and the adjoining Indian territorial waters. The ground station were installed on INCOIS campus to acquire data every day and as and when satellites pass over the region. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching this edition of Question Hour. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV for more national and international stories.
Take care and stay safe.